I'm Jack Kennedy, and we're here to bring you the latest in MMA.
Hey everybody, my name's Hunter Boss, and what the boss says goes.
What is up everyone, my name is Keelan McNamara, and you already know what time it is.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the MMA Island podcast. I am Jack Kennedy alongside Keelan McNamara and Hunter Boss. Oh my goodness, UFC 271, man, did it deliver. My first ever UFC fight I went to live, and man, it was such a privilege to be there. Just a great event, top to bottom. The fans were unbelievable. The fights were unbelievable. Everything about the event was unreal. And we're going to break it down right now, starting with the news. Co-main event, right? There were so many good fights on this card, right? We had the main three was Brunson Cannonier, Tuivasa Lewis, and of course the main event. Let's start with Tuivasa Lewis, right? Craziness. Hunter, what are your thoughts on the result of Tai Tuivasa knocking out Derek Lewis?
My thoughts are, what the heck just happened? You know, I'm looking at him and I'm looking, oh man, Derek Lewis throws another huge shot and lands it. Oh, how's he not asleep yet? How's he not? He's asleep. He's asleep. Like, I'm going crazy. I'm like, how the hell did Tai Tuivasa knock out Derek Lewis? Because if we're looking at the statistics going before the fight, Derek Lewis just fought Chris Daukaus, who was on a 5-fight knockout streak, and then he knocked him out. And I'm thinking to myself, Tai Tuivasa. I mean, he's fun and all. He's got the shoeies, he's got the brand, and I'd love to support him. But how the hell is he going to be a seasoned veteran like Derek Lewis, who has the most knockouts in the UFC? That's how he does it. He beats him with an elbow in the second round. There's the secret, guys. You either Cyril Gane, make him frustrated for him not to throw a strike ever, or you elbow him to the temple and then he just goes unconscious. Oh my God, that was so cool. I mean, you have to feel for Derek Lewis, but the way that knockout occurred and how his lifeless body kind of just hit the canvas, everyone, I'm sure, Jack, you could probably attest to this, was going crazy. I mean, insane. Even the fans in Houston, I'm sure, were on their feet after that knockout. And just fantastic fight all together. First round, if we want an actual like in-depth breakdown, first round Derek Lewis, I'd say. Like,
100%.
Pretty heavily. Like he landed some heavy strikes. Tai Tuivasa didn't land much. They were both kind of hesitant to throw at first. And I'm sure a lot of people lost some money because this fight did not end in the first round. It ended in round 2. When they started swinging and banging. And as soon as they started swinging and banging, Tai Tuivasa came out there and he's like, you know what? You may have the hammer. I got the sledgehammer. And Tai Tuivasa knocks him out with a gnarly elbow to the temple. And it was a beautiful fight.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What can you say? I have to be honest here, and this isn't me being arrogant or anything, because that's the last thing any of us can do, being the fans of the sport that we are. The way the fight ended shocked everybody, but the result didn't, because I thought Tai Tuivasa would win, and I did predict that he would win. You know, for once I finally got some momentum going in the predictions, and it was Tai Tuivasa that did it. Yeah, just what a fight, by the way. Just what an unreal fight for both of these guys. Like you both said, the first round was definitely pretty much all Derek Lewis. Came out, started to find his confidence, landed a few very heavy shots. Tai Tuivasa did well to stay in it at times, ride out that Houston momentum and take it into the second round. And then Derek Lewis did the stupidest thing Derek Lewis could have done. He got in a firefight with a heavyweight that hits as hard as he does, if not more. You know, I remember watching this because it was obviously only a few days ago. And I saw Derek Lewis step in to engage. And I thought, Derek, he's not hurt. Don't do this. You know, for some reason, Derek Lewis thought Tai Tuivasa was there for the taking. And Tai Tuivasa wasn't. You know, Tai Tuivasa came up, hit that counter hook, wobbled Derek badly, landed those few shots against his guard, and then that Matt Brown-esque hell blow, that elbow to the side of the head, just put Derek Lewis flat on his face. I mean, that's the most shocking ending any of us could have predicted to that fight, regardless of who you thought was going to win. The fact that such a savage sledgehammer of an elbow finished it the way it did, words don't even describe it. Like that sort of new metal song, bodies did hit the floor. Unfortunately, it was Derek Lewis's body that hit the floor. And, even when we think of the impact of this fight and where we go from here after it, this is huge for Tai Tuivasa. It is really, really massive because he's a top 5 heavyweight now. Be under no illusion, he's
just knocked down number 2. He is so definitely a top 5.
Literally just knocked out number 2. I mean,
sorry, Keelan, one more interruption here. He's ranked number 11. He's ranked number 11, and he fought the number 2 ranked contender and knocked him out. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah,
it's madness. Yeah. It's beyond reason, and that's why it's so great. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if he doesn't get one already, Tai Tuivasa is one big performance away from a title shot. And how mad is that to say? Because 2 years ago, he was on a 3-fight losing skid and looked like he was going to be cut. Now he's on something like a 5 or 6 fight run. And now he's in the top 5. I mean, it's insane, massive, massive congrats to Tai Tuivasa. That should be his new nickname instead of Bam Bam. Well, actually, Bam Bam Shui should be his nickname. But big congrats to the guy. What a performance. And Jack, tell us how the crowd was.
So first off, right, not only is he on a 5-fight win streak now, a 5 knockout streak now, Tai Tuivasa is. Oh my goodness. Like, I'm going to try my best to describe it. However, and this was my first ever UFC fight. I had been a fan my entire life, so it was extra meaningful to me. However, even if you're not a particularly like in-depth fan into MMA, I urge you to try and go to an event. Because just the feeling, there was 25,000 people there. And once you go into that arena, you don't ask people where you're from, what you're doing, who you are. You sit down next to people in your row and you're talking like you've been friends your entire life. Everyone is intensely in that moment. You don't necessarily expect to be freaking out about every little thing, but that's what ends up happening. And it gets deafening, so loud. There's a good video that Tai Tuivasa posted of his corner immediately following the knockout. Now, I didn't get that video because I was losing my mind. I was jumping up and down and freaking out, and everybody else was. But that video is as close as you could get to, like, that's like maybe 70% of like how loud it actually was. And if you listen to that full on AirPods, you'd probably break your AirPod speakers because it is just that loud. It was that crazy. Houston fans are the best. Every single time Houston was mentioned, and like they were playing a Houston rap song, if they were mentioning someone from Houston, Derek Lewis's walkout was crazy. And then they do Derek, the Black Beast, Lewis, and everybody's saying that along. Unreal. The environment truly unmatched. Onto the fight itself, of course. I thought Derek Lewis was going to win going into it, right? Because, and we're mentioning, like Keelan, you mentioned, right? Like, why would Derek Lewis engage with Tai Tuivasa? Because no one's done that to Derek Lewis before. Derek Lewis doesn't have to worry about getting hit back because his chin's better than yours. And once Derek Lewis connects, it's night-night. That's it. That's how Derek Lewis fights. And another thing I want to mention as well, Derek Lewis did not hold back in this fight. He, like I predicted, was going forward. He was looking to do it. And look, Derek Lewis did not, like, he should be upset about his performance against Cyril Gane. He should not be upset about his performance against Tai Tuivasa because he left it all on the line. What ended up happening was Tai just beat him. I mean, that's what it was. Tai Tuivasa just beat Derek Lewis. Look, slanging and banging, just like they were saying before. The fight lived up to the hype. It's one of those fights where the entire time everyone is standing up because it's just that intense. When Derek Lewis landed a couple takedowns in the first round and then was punching Tai against the cage, I thought it was over. Everybody else thought it was over, but Tai Tuivasa's chin, that's how he kind of finished Chris Dawkins, was that exact situation. Yeah. Tai kept fighting forward and made it out of that situation. Second round comes, Derek Lewis hurts him again. Tai defends a takedown. Derek Lewis almost lands a knee that would have knocked him out. Then Tai catches him with a punch. And then that was the first elbow he landed. They separate. Tai lands a left hook or whatever. Derek Lewis buckles a little bit. At that point, everybody's going, whoa. And then, then the elbow happens. And then it's like, what just happened? Because he landed the elbow. And just whenever you're watching it live, there's just like a pause. And it went silent for a second. and then he fell face planted, and the place went bananas. It was crazy, and it was really, honestly, because it was in Houston, it was really, and I love Derek Lewis so much. I love Tai Tuivasa so much. I love Derek Lewis so much, and it was really sad at first when Derek Lewis lost because everybody was going for him in Houston, of course. And then as soon as Tai Tuivasa jumped up and did the shoey, everyone went, wow, because it's not one of those fights where people hate the other guy. It was just you have to go for Derek Lewis because he's from Houston. But yeah, that happened. It was crazy. What a performance by Tai Tuivasa. And the only comparison I can think of is like the Bengals making the Super Bowl. Like Tai Tuivasa is one fight away from potentially fighting for a title, if not his next fight. We're talking potential Cyril Gane or Stipe for Tai Tuivasa. What is happening? I love it. I'm here for it. Tuivasa, Bam Bam, whatever you call him. Oh my goodness, what a performance. What a night. I'm talking so much because I'm buzzing. I know everyone that was there is thinking the same thing, but I'm telling you guys, just the environment. I could still feel, I'm getting chills thinking about it. Just everything about that was unreal. It was amazing. Let's move on to the main event right now because that was, we have a whole other fight to talk about. Israel Adesanya, Robert Whittaker. Adesanya won by a decision. A very close fight. Hunter, what are your thoughts?
This is one of those fights where you can't be mad at the decision. It was a very close fight. And if you wanted the decision to go the other way, maybe you should have done more. I, for one, had Whittaker winning rounds 2, 4, and 5.
Yeah.
Just because, though Adesanya probably outstruck him in all those rounds, they were jabs and leg kicks as opposed to Whittaker's heavy left hooks, sometimes followed by the right hook and the takedowns. When I watched the fight, I was looking towards significant changes in motion. Izzy basically had octagon control almost the entire time.
Yeah.
But when it came down to ground control, Izzy was able to stand right back up after Whittaker took him down. But in a fight that's such little is happening, you kind of have to take those takedowns into account because not much else was happening. You have to realize, man, that takedown in a regular fight probably wouldn't have meant much. But since not much is happening in this round, I feel like the takedowns that did occur are probably worth more than they should, or they were graded at that point. All in all, though, it was a good fight. And you could totally see that it was a close fight between the two. Whittaker was knocked down in the first round. At that point, I feel like a lot of fans thought Izzy's going to take it home. It's going to be a clean fight. It's going to be the first time around. We're going to see a carbon copy of the first fight. That fight didn't happen. Whittaker came out there. He brought it. He had good striking. We obviously saw the takedowns in round 2 were pretty effective. He landed some big shots in that round as well. And we realized Whittaker was still in this fight. One thing I will say, though, Jack, you may not have heard it, but I felt like the commentators were not very keen on Whittaker doing
I heard
much.
about that. Yeah.
I was watching the fight, and I felt like I was yelling at my TV. I'm like, well, mostly it's Bisping. I hate to hate on Bisping. I love Bisping. I'm a Bisping fan. When we had Kendra Lust on, I was hyping up Bisping. I'm a big Bisping fan. But what happened in this fight is he's telling all the wrong things that Robert was doing. And when I'm looking at it, what is he supposed to do? Like, Bisping was getting angry with Whittaker throwing so many left hooks and lunging left hooks and trying to get on the inside. I'm thinking to myself, well, how the hell else is he supposed to hit Israel Adesanya? If he's not trying to cut the distance in any way and trying to maybe a lunging left hook, and Izzy's not countering it with anything really, maybe a jab or two, but that's not going to put out Whittaker. It just felt like the commentary was a little bit biased, I will admit, and it's felt that way for a lot of Izzy's fights. Though rightfully so, and most of the other ones, he's dominant in the other ones, so it's like, it's good. It's fine. But in this fight, it didn't seem very, very close when it came to the commentary booth, though the scorecards might say otherwise. But all in all, it was a good fight. I have to admit. It was a little slow. I'm not going to lie. And for main events, this one was one of the lesser main events, but it had the whole card backing it up. So it's not like we were blessed with so many knockouts and submissions in the undercard. I was okay with it not ending in fireworks, both fought their heart out. I feel really bad for Robert Whittaker because what is he going to do? Is he going to move down to welterweight? Does he stay the number 1 contender and just hope he gets another shot at Izzy at one point or another? Or what happens for Whittaker? That's a good question that we might answer in a future podcast. But there's not much for Whitaker left. I feel like he's cleared out almost everyone. He hasn't fought Marvin Vettori yet in the top 5, and he hasn't fought Paulo Costa, I believe. Though Costa could be moving up. We have no idea what the hell is going to happen to Costa at this point. Following the last fight he had with the weight issues, but there's not much left for Whitaker at middleweight, so it's hard to say. But when we're talking about the fight itself, it was a good fight.
I have the perfect analogy for Robert Whitaker when it comes to Israel Adesanya, and that analogy is this. Robert Whitaker is the story of Goldilocks and the Three Little Bears. Now, bear with me because you'll see where I'm going with this.
3 times.
Adesanya won too hot, went in too hot, too emotional, got knocked out. Adesanya 2, too cold, arguably too conservative, not hot enough. If a third fight happens, maybe he does actually get it right. So you thought I was going to make a dick out of myself, and I didn't for
Definitely
one.
Not. No, totally not. I saw exactly where you're going. I'm like, this is a good analogy. I like this.
Spot on.
Yeah, we use nursery rhymes on the MMA podcast. You didn't think we could do it.
Keelan, you got full control.
We're up here with the nursery rhymes and all.
Yeah.
You guys already
how we do it.
How we down with that. No, I mean, I'm never going to get the chance to use that again. So come on, how many trilogies do we ever really see?
You never know.
Hey, no, in all seriousness, though, there's a lot to break down from this fight. And Hunter, I think you've covered a lot of it perfectly already, but I will try and add what I can where I can. I scored it exactly the same as Hunter when I watched it live and when I watched it back. I watched it with commentary and I watched it with the commentary on mute. And I had it 2, 4, and 5 for Rob and 1 and 3 for Izzy. There's a lot of dynamics to break down here, but I'll break down the fight itself first. First round, Adesanya came out hot, knocked Robert down. Like Hunter said, we all thought this was going to be the first fight all over again, and that Izzy would just put him away. 2 and 3, Robert came out much more conservatively, but much more effectively. Saw the beginnings of that constant left hook that would eventually get Rob back into the fight. Saw the beginnings of the takedowns as well. Round 4, definitely Adesanya's came out, stepped up the game with the leg kicks. Were starting to hurt Rob quite badly. I think it was clear to see. And then round 5, I thought Rob took as well. Thought it was more of the hooks, the takedown as well. And yeah, that's how I scored it. Now, the very glaring problem with this fight, and again, to his credit, Hunter's covered this really, really well. The problem with this fight is that both guys could have done more, and neither guy did enough. To be honest with you, if anything, I wouldn't have been mad if this fight was even a draw, because I don't think there was enough to split them in that way, especially in a title fight. I think Woodley Wonderboy, the first fight, was the perfect example of that, where there was too little to split them. And if that had been the case, I wouldn't have been mad at that. But again, this is a fight where, because so little has happened, you physically don't have enough to argue that it was a robbery or that one fighter should have won more so over the other. The problem that I have with this, and Michael Chandler tweeted this, and I actually agree with what Michael Chandler said, there seems to be such a clear advantage to the incumbent champion that all they have to do is not get knocked out, and they're going to have more of an advantage when it comes to a decision. And I don't agree with that at all. Yes, when it comes to decisions, you've got to take the belt away from the champion. I understand that. But there's a very, very clear leaning in judgment towards incumbent champions when it comes to decisions. And I have to be honest, I don't agree with it at all. When it comes to a fight like this and so little has happened, Hunter nailed this really, really well. You have to really, really analyze everything that happened. And really what this comes down to is 1 Adesanya knockdown and octagon pressure versus all the left hooks and 4 takedowns, and which you give more weighting to. And I think on the balance of that, you have to give more weighting to Whitaker. I really do. Now, if Whitaker had thrown more right hooks and perhaps backed Izzy up a couple of times, the argument maybe would have been clearer. But that's just the way I see this. I think you've got to give more weighting to the takedowns than simply 1 knockdown and octagon control, because the cumulative effect of the takedowns supersedes 1 knockdown. It just has to. Otherwise, we may as well just make it a kickboxing match and completely eliminate wrestling entirely. But either way, at the end of the day, you can't really be mad or raging at one side or the other because, like Hunter said, and like I'm agreeing with him, there wasn't enough to happen to hate one way or the other. The last thing that I'm going to say is this, because this is another point that I really wanted to address: the commentators. I was not happy with this at all. And look, I'm a big Michael Bisping fan as well. I mean, I've met Michael
Yeah.
Bisping. And, I'm really fortunate to say that I have. I love the guy, I really do. But his commentary was poor. I have to call it like I see it. I was not happy with it whatsoever. I was watching that fifth round, and Michael Bisping said very clearly, "You can go back and watch this if you don't believe me."
Like 4.
Michael Bisping said Izzy has won every single round. And if you believe that, Michael, then you really need to reevaluate how you're scoring. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's the truth because that is insane if you mean that. And Daniel Cormier isn't much better. There seems to be this thing. I don't know if it's the fact that MMA has become mainstream and there's a lot of casual fans now, but what's happened to the commentary teams? A lot of them have gone very casual all of a sudden. It's happened in areas to Joe Rogan, and now it's happening to Bisping and DC as well. The only one who seems to have their head screwed on is John Anik, and he's the lead commentator. I mean, I have to be honest, like, it's not a hanging offense by anybody's measurements, but I'm not happy with it either. If you're really going to sit there and say Izzy's won every single round, then I mean, I think questions have to be asked there. I really, really do. Um, I think the problem with Bisping and DC is, even though they're both great at what they do, and even though I have the utmost of respect for them, I think they have this tendency to get too emotionally involved in what's happening. And they almost do become like guys at a bar just saying what they think is happening rather than what is actually happening. And I think there needs to be much more of a line put between that because it is starting to become a little bit irritating now. And I just have to be honest, that's the way it is. Jack, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts in the main event, but that's just where I stand on all of it.
Yeah, well, let's start with this, right? I think you guys will agree with me, but we can all agree that round one was definitely not a 10-8, right? I mean, whenever they scored that, yeah, it was ridiculous. Judging was weird. They got most of the scorecards right, I felt, except for there was some weird like split decisions, like Roxanne almost got a split decision.
Oh, Robert Alexander.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in the arena, everyone seemed to agree with everything you guys were saying, including myself. I had 3-2 Robert Whitaker. I had 2, 4, and 5 for Whitaker. However, whenever it did go to a decision, I was telling everyone that there's no way Whitaker is going to win the decision. They're going to give it to Israel Adesanya. And it was funny. We were sitting next to, my uncle and I were sitting next to some Adesanya fans. Most people in the arena were going for Adesanya at first. And even the guy was like, yeah, probably Whitaker 3-2. But look, and it makes sense. Honestly, I don't think you can call this fight a robbery. People were really upset walking out of the arena. I wasn't, because I was like, this fight was way too close to be called a robbery. You could absolutely make a case that Israel Adesanya won that fight. I think you could absolutely make that case. Because really not that much happened in the fifth round except for that takedown. And I know usually we're like not that much happened. This fight was so intense from start to finish. It was like you're on the edge of your seat because these are the two most skilled middleweights in the world going at it. That's why it was such a cagey affair, because they're the best in the world right now, and it showed it. And they were so evenly matched even to the end of it. The knockdown for Adesanya was obviously big in round one. That was a very clear round, and I thought round two was very clear for Robert Whitaker. 3 less clear. 4, actually 4 was pretty clear, but then 5 was definitely the less clear. I think everyone pretty much had a 2-2 going to 5. How you score round 5, that's up to you. We all have Whitaker. A lot of people in the arena had Whitaker. But if you score on Adesanya, that's it. You can respect that opinion. It's not a bad opinion. People calling it a robbery, it's not a robbery. It was way too close of a fight. And you could absolutely score it for Adesanya. It's disappointing because you like to see Robert Whitaker. He put in all that work and really had a great performance. But you know what? We were all talking about Robert Whitaker. Adesanya had a great performance as well, dealing with Robert Whitaker, because we're thinking that, Adesanya should just mop the floor with him. No, he's Robert Whitaker. And Adesanya did a great job. Those leg kicks were nasty. He really mangled his leg. Jabs were amazing, managing the distance. So Adesanya had a great performance as well. Really, really, really solid fight overall. And we're going to be talking a little later in the podcast about who's next. I mean, obviously, Cannonier's next for his Adesanya, basically unofficially. But man, it was just a good fight. A great night, capped off by a very intense main event. I scored at Whitaker, but at the end of the day, I thought it was going to go to Adesanya just because it's that close. And this brings it back to the championship thing, right? Way back in the day, John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson. I still think Gustafsson won that fight. However, it's John Jones, and I thought Gustafsson did more in that fight than Whitaker did in this one. But it's the same sort of thing, right? Whenever you have, I don't think it's all champions, which is weird, right? Because we just saw Brandon Moreno lose to Figueiredo, which is fascinating whenever we're talking about this, right? But I think there's certain personalities like John Jones, like Israel Adesanya, that also inspire not only the decisions to go their way if it's a close fight, but also the biased commentary. Because if we look back, Israel Adesanya's, honestly, both of his last fights, Vettori, which was justified because he was dominating that fight, but then Jan Blachowicz was very biased commentary. Remember the feints? The feints were winning him the fight, and Blachowicz was doing amazing in that fight. So I think certain fighters get more biased commentary because, look, Adesanya, love him or hate him, being in that fight week, he makes things so exciting. He gets the massive pop. Other than Derek Lewis, got the biggest pop. People going for him, people going against him, mix of boos and cheers. He makes it exciting. So yeah, hey, good fights overall. Great main event, very intense. Yeah, Keelan.
Yeah, I just want to add as well, because I think there's potentially another avenue here that not many people are noticing. And again, it's actually something Michael Chandler noticed too. I have to give the guy his credit. Before this fight, Adesanya renewed his contract.
Yes.
And they say it's one of the biggest UFC contract renewals there's ever been. And look, Adesanya is one of the most popular figures in the UFC. That's not even up for debate. Quite frankly, I'm not implying anybody messed with the judges or anything that severe. That's not what I'm getting at. But I do think there's a vested interest in Adesanya being the middleweight champion because he's a cash cow. I think it's something akin to what would have happened to McGregor if he'd have gone on and been in this situation. And I think it's something that was similar with John Jones as well back in the day too. I think if you're a certain type of champion and you bring in a certain level of appeal, I think there's a vested interest in keeping you at the top of your division. That's just my 2 cents.
No, Keelan, I'm so happy you brought that up because I was going to bring up the same thing. I think, Izzy's a superstar in the sport, and you don't want to get rid of – okay, I don't want to put this the wrong way, so please don't take it the wrong way. But you don't want to replace a character like Israel Adesanya with a character like Robert Whitaker so fast because Izzy is entertaining, like Jack, you said, and like Keelan said, they're entertaining. They make fight week so much fun. Everyone loves looking at all the dance moves Izzy does, and he watches anime. He's the people's champ now too. But Robert Whitaker, on the other hand, he's not as like outspoken as Izzy is. He's very
family guy,
reserved family guy. He's super funny if you like watch some of his interviews, but he's not like in your face funny. He just says some funny comments sometimes, some witty remarks maybe here and there. But altogether, the reasons why the fans like Whitaker is because he's such a nice guy. He's a nice guy. And we can't have too many nice guys as champion in the UFC because then it'll kind of lose its flair as the ultimate fighting contest. We can't have Stephen Thompson running around with Robert Whitaker and Brandon Moreno. No, we got to mix in the bad guys. Get Figueiredo over there. Keep Izzy on top. He's going to sell money like no other. If he wants to move to light heavyweight, now he has a chance to move to light heavyweight. He's going to become the double champ if that happens. There's a lot of crazy things that could happen here. And I feel like what happened when it came to the commentary booth, I'm thinking if there's a stale moment in any part of the fight, maybe they're pressured to talk about Izzy rather than Whitaker. Simple basis, he sells more. Probably what the boss wants. The boss wants people to like or Adesanya more than Whitaker, and that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen if the commentators keep fudging around the numbers. Maybe choosing not to look at some things here and there. That's okay, or it's not okay. But you know what? It happened. All we can do is move past it and give them more Twitter beef, and that way maybe they can straighten up a little bit, if you say.
Yeah, that is a phenomenal point right there. That is a very good point because the crowd reaction. I'm telling you, they shut off all the lights for his walkout. He does a bigger walkout. He is absolutely a larger than life personality. And whether you love him or hate him, it's exciting. There's a reason they built the fight week around Israel Adesanya. It's because of that reason. And I agree with you. As much as we all love Robert Whittaker, and I would have loved to see him be champion, he will not sell like Israel Adesanya did. That sold out like that. It sold out like that. With the hype behind it, everyone was there, completely packed for that main event. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you guys. Good stuff. Amazing fights. I was glad I was there. Let's move on to the best of the best. And this question is brought to you by Keelan McNamara in our group chat earlier today because why not? You know, we're gonna throw it out there. It is, what would happen if Francis Ngannou today fought a Pride Prime Alistair Overeem? Hunter, what do you think?
I think both fighters would get tested really fast for steroids.
Yeah, and Ngannou just gets bigger. Yeah.
A little Ubering might be happening there. You know, I think it would be a lot more than like a little left titty thing for Israel Adesanya. You know, if fans at home who don't know, a lot of people think Izzy's on steroids because his left titty sags a little bit more than his right one.
It's just weed. That's what it is.
Yeah,
it's just a side effect.
I'm no scientist or anthropologist or anything that studies humans. Or doctor should have been the first one.
So. You got Dr. Hunter Boss. You got it.
I don't think it's that big of a deal. When it comes to Alistair Overeem, at that time, dude, that man was on so many steroids it would kill a horse. Like it was crazy.
Him and Vitor back in the day.
Yeah,
were totally different.
It was fun. But you know, he did in those Pride days lose to some notable names like Chuck Liddell, Shogun Hua a few times, I believe. Big Nog he lost to. Ngannou really has only lost to the best champion at heavyweight there's ever been in Stipe Miocic. And he got dominated, but obviously we can tell he can wrestle now. You know, he's not just a one-trick pony. He doesn't just have the knockout power. He can wrestle. And I'm not saying Alistair Overeem can't wrestle, because Alistair most definitely can. He can wrestle, and he's got good BJJ. Alistair's a fantastic fighter. But when it comes to the big lights, he tends to not exactly perform his best when the big lights are shown. And that's what this fight would be. This would be a big lights fight. You know, all the attention's on these two. Alistair, I think, in general, is a fantastic fighter and could be maybe even a little bit more skillful. But at this point, I would say Ngannou would win simply because Alistair might crack under the pressure, and I think Ngannou's power is matched to none. So I think Ngannou would end up winning that dream fantasy matchup.
Yeah, I can't believe I got put on the spot for proposing this segment. That's real.
Credit where credit is due, Keelan. Come on, we got to shout out the source.
No, too kind. I appreciate it. I can't believe we've gone from talking about Whittaker and Adesanya to dude's tit and all this stuff.
Heavyweight. It was a bit of a weird transition, right? Yeah.
I mean, this is just what we do here, isn't it? This is what we've become. Yeah. Anyway, first of all, I think USADA would probably be the biggest winner in that fight. I think Hunter is fair in that point. But no, the reason I propose this is that it was a thought that came to me earlier. I don't know why, but Pride was coming to me. And then I just thought of the orange shorts Pride Alistair Overeem. And obviously we saw old Overeem against Ngannou. And Overeem was given a pretty good account of himself until he got uppercutted by Francis Ngannou, which is never a fun experience for anybody. No, I got to be honest, if we were ever able to do like a dream heavyweight Grand Prix like Pride, but with any fighter in any era from heavyweight, it's a fight that would really excite me because, well, the dynamic now is that Francis Ngannou can wrestle. That's a big thing that does have to be mentioned. But Alistair Overeem is one of the greatest kickboxers we've ever seen. You know, K1 champion, Dream Championship champion, fought in Strikeforce, fought in Pride, fought in the UFC, demolished Brock Lesnar as well under the bright lights too. I just feel I have to mention that in the name of Overeem. And so stylistically, it's a fight that would really excite me. And everybody who's watching this, please do let me know what your thoughts are on this, because I'm really curious to hear what everybody thinks. Drop them down below. I would very much like to see. If it were a stand-up match, that would be fascinating, because Ngannou can box. I mean, and he hits harder than anybody ever has ever. But Overeem's kickboxing was something else back in the day. And if you've never watched Alistair Overeem in Dream or K1 or Pride, go and watch it because it is a spectacle. And yes, he's lost to guys like Big Nog, and he's lost to guys, of that ilk, lost to Chuck Liddell and so on. But a lot of them were submissions. Francis Ngannou doesn't do the submission game as well as many other people. And he's only really been knocked out by the likes of Chuck Liddell, which there's no shame whatsoever in being knocked out by the prime Iceman. So, I mean, even though I propose and one, very true. I can't really give a proper answer to my own question just because it's such an exciting fantasy matchup.
You have to give it
Keelan. No. We are not allowing that.
Cut off right here. You're giving an answer.
No chance. Pick a fighter. Come on, Keelan. Come on. It's your own question.
Flag on the field. And all right, you know what? I'll give my prediction.
Flying armbar Francis Ngannou,
Flying armbar.
Yeah, some Demetrius Johnson.
Exactly.
It's his dream fight. I'm going to go for the dream dub. Yeah.
We're going to go Ryan Hall 50-50 for
Ryan Hall 50-50.
Francis Ngannou.
Hell yeah. Ooh.
Alistair Overeem's second round knockout.
Ooh.
Okay. Very interesting. Thank you for making a pick, Keelan. We know you forced into it, but it was your question. Come on, man. No, I love the question because it's obviously we saw the fight happen, and it is probably the most brutal knockout in UFC history. But it was a different time, and Alistair Overeem wasn't on steroids. So basically, the question of this is it's not only a prime Alistair Overeem, is it a guy with steroids, can he beat Francis Ngannou? I think is the biggest question, right?
With steroids, he had kickboxing too,
and kickboxing. However, we look if we're making the same argument, the kickboxing is still there when he actually fought Francis Ngannou later in his career, right? We're not saying the kickboxing went away.
He probably knew more too at that later point in time.
Plus, better wrestling, and he's experienced in the octagon. So we're making an argument, right?
Yeah.
And it was also another big thing that was a less involved Ngannou, a guy who had no real power. Like he only had power and was just swinging.
That's true.
Whenever they fought. So if we're talking Francis Ngannou now versus that Alistair Overeem, look, I love the question because those Pride guys were a different breed, and Alistair Overeem was a different breed. However, I'm pretty heavy Ngannou on this one, and I know I'm Ngannou for a lot of things, but it's just because he is so good, and especially at this point in his career, he looks like a different animal right now. For me, it's just the wrestling is a factor. However, I don't think in this fight in particular, if we're doing Pride, Alistair Overeem and Ngannou would go to that wrestling. I think the biggest thing that could be a danger in this fight would not even be head strikes from Alistair Overeem, but the body kicks. Because back in the day, Alistair Overeem had some gnarly liver kicks, body shots that he would finish guys with. And Ngannou would have to watch that. I think that would be the most dangerous thing. However, all it takes is one punch, like it happened in their real fight whenever we saw it go down, for anyone to get their lights knocked out. And at this point in Alistair Overeem's career, his chin was better, but Alistair Overeem has never really been known for having a good chin at any point in his career. And Ngannou, the biggest power we've ever seen versus, an amazing fighter in Alistair Overeem, right? An amazing kickboxer, one of the best heavyweights we've ever seen in UFC history, not mentioning Pride. So it's a phenomenal matchup. It's a phenomenal question. However, just takes one. And I think Ngannou would still get it done. At least that's my opinion. But Keelan, thank you so much for the question, man. Like that was a really good question. And more than anything, thank you for actually making a pick on your own question. It was tough, but we got it. And thank you. But yeah, guys. So let's move on to the discussion of the week. Transitioning back now to UFC 271, we're talking Israel Adesanya and who can challenge him at 185. Obviously, Jared Cannonier is likely up next for that title shot. But Hunter, who do you think in his weight class can challenge Israel Adesanya?
There's one person.
There's
one person. He's not currently fighting in his weight class. He used to back at one point. His name is Khamzat Chimaev. This guy is a different breed. Yep. He is something we haven't seen before. I mean, the man's only been hit 4 or 5 times, and he's fought in 4 or 5 fights already. This man goes in there. He has one goal, and that's to smash He's going to smash his opponents. And Kazma Chimaev at 185, we've seen him before.
Yeah.
He's a scary guy still. Like,
yeah.
we think he's big at welterweight. He's still big at middleweight. I mean, he's putting on like pounds and pounds, puts on 15 pounds still just to get to welterweight. He's still cutting for middleweight. You know that, right? Like, this man probably walks around at 210 and he cuts all the way down to get it to 170 for welterweight. And he could most definitely do it at 185 for middleweight. This man would give Izzy a problem. We've seen what Izzy's problem is he can be taken down. Like, and I'm not saying that's like a huge problem and everyone could be taken down, you know, that's the glaring chink in Israel Adesanya's armor, you know, it's his wrestling ability. Kazma Chimaev is like the Khabib of the heavier weights, you know. We look at the lightweights and down, we think, oh man, Khabib's the best wrestler. That's whatever. Welterweight, totally Kamaru Usman. There it is. Middleweight, though, it could be Kazma. Dude, Kazma is freaking insane on the ground. He picks you up in a body lock. He talks shit to you while he's standing up with you. He's like, hey, Dana, I'm going to smash him too.
Get off your phone.
Throws him to the ground in front of his boys, you know. He proceeds to beat the crap out of you until you give up or he submits you. You know, it's like, it's hard. We haven't seen any dangerous situations for Kazma Chimaev. Yeah. So it's hard to say what Izzy could do against him. I mean, he could obviously knock him out because Izzy's that good of a kickboxer. But we haven't seen anyone really land a punch on Kazma Chimaev. So this is the only reason I bring this up. The only reason I bring this up is because I don't think there's anyone else at 185 currently who presents a challenge to Israel Adesanya. I thought that one person is Whitaker, and they've duked it out 2 times. There's probably not going to be a third fight. Never say never, but there's probably not in this organization, I should say. They could do some Tito Ortiz, Chuck Liddell shit at maybe Triller, you know, but they're not doing it here. Well, he could fight on Jake Paul's undercard and whatnot.
The year is 2060.
Yeah, exactly. And but I don't think there's going to be a third fight, just because it's not like the first 2 were super entertaining. I mean, the first one I ended in a knockout, so it was a great fight. Well, lots of fun. Second fight, say it how you will, it wasn't that entertaining. Let's be honest here. There wasn't much action that happened. I still found it to be somewhat enjoyable, but it wasn't like it was the craziest fight ever. And it didn't end in knockout, didn't end in submission, and it was really close. So what's left at 185 for Whitaker or Adesanya? Not much. You know, there's a Jared Cannonier who is a fantastic striker, but he's very inconsistent. And he just came off a giant knockout. So I don't want to take anything away from him. But we've seen fighters like that try to challenge Israel Adesanya, and it hasn't worked. And I'm still given no reason to believe that Izzy's going to lose to Jared Cannonier, or honestly anyone in that weight class. Darren Till, I think he'll beat, you know, he's already beat Paulo Costa. He's already beat Yoel Romero. He's beat all the big names at middleweight currently. There's not much left for him there. Like, if I'm being honest, he should start planning on putting on a few pounds, maybe moving up a weight division, you know. But the question is, who's going to beat Israel Adesanya at 185, or who can still stand a chance? I think Kazma Chimaev, because one thing, we don't know much about him, and what we do know about him is that he kills. And the second thing is that we know one thing about Whitaker's defense that's not great, and that's his takedown. I mean, it's hard to take him down, and it's most definitely even harder to keep him down. But with a fighter like Kazma Chimaev, who cuts so much weight and is a big fighter, when you step in that octagon, it has good wrestling, it has that like combat sambo wrestling, and just, you know, the Dagestani mountain bullshit. Yeah. It's going to be hard to disagree with that.
It's the beard.
It's the beard. It's the unbeardable beard. You know, that's why I got one going. You know, like Dagestani beard.
You gotta save the stash, and then it'll be
exactly.
He's on the Aljamain Sterling vibe.
Exactly.
So bad.
I smash you, brother. Come on. Sign contract.
Yo, ladies and gentlemen, the new U.S. Secretary of State, Mr. Hunter Boss, that Dagestani mountain bullshit. That's the best line I've ever heard. No,
make it
quote one. We need to make.
Where's the belt tag?
I will make that a t-shirt, because that is so lit. Just Hunter's face Dagestani mountain bullshit. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, if you want us to make that, we will get it done.
It's the DMB belt. Yeah,
I'll tell you where it goes. If I got fans out there that'll draw me something, it's going right there. Like,
oh yeah,
is going It's going there, or it'll go there, or it'll go here. But you'll see it in the podcast.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, to paraphrase one of my favorite rappers, Nipsey Hussle. Yes, shock, I do like Nipsey Hussle. Israel Adesanya is on his victory lap of the middleweight division. He's cleaned it out once, and all he's doing is cleaning it out again. And then there really is nothing left for him there. In terms of how many fighters I think who can beat Israel Adesanya, and neither of them are at middleweight. One of them is very left.
That's not a good sign for middleweights out there.
What is happening right now?
Just wait. Don't worry.
Middleweight division.
You'll like where this is going. I don't think there's anyone left at middleweight. I really don't believe so. To the shock of nobody, my first pick is Khamzat Chimaev. For every reason and more than Hunter. Yes, I know. It's as much of a shock as me hating TJ Dillashaw at this point.
Or picking Corey Sandhagen for everything imaginable.
I forgot someone. Hey, Jake Paul would beat Izzy too.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I forgot about that. My bad.
He didn't say that. Sorry, erase that.
Yeah.
No, Chimaev's just a monster.
Yeah.
But he's a monster who is killing himself and starving himself to make welterweight. And he's not going to be able to do it much longer. I do believe that is the case. Not because he's ill-disciplined or anything. In fact, I think Chimaev is one of the most disciplined and tough fighters out there. The problem is you can't keep depriving your body vitally for that long. Eventually, your body will give out on you. It started to happen to Khabib towards the end of his career because he was murdering himself trying to make 155. Yeah. And Chimaev's doing the same thing at welterweight. So come hell or high water, come rain or shine, Khamzat Chimaev is moving up to middleweight at some point. In fact, I think it'll probably be after he fights for the title, which will be sooner rather than later. And at 185, Izzy's got a massive problem with Chimaev, not only with the wrestling, but with the striking. And this isn't to do with Chimaev's striking ability, but there's two things to consider with the striking game when Chimaev faces Adesanya. One, Chimaev's massive frame is going to be controlling all the octagon pressure. So Izzy's going to have to fight on the back foot for as long as that fight lasts. And I'm not saying Adesanya can't do it. In fact, I think he can do it, but it will be exhausting having the pressure of someone like Chimaev unrelenting for all that period of time. That's going to be a factor that's going to have to be considered. Secondly, the actual frame of Khamzat Chimaev himself. Khamzat Chimaev is massive. He is a huge human being. And Adesanya is not going to have the height advantage or the reach advantage like he does in many of his current fights. He's going to have to punch up. He's going to have to kick farther. He's not going to be able to sort of counter-strike someone like Chimaev. He's going to have to go out and put that pressure on him. And that's a very dangerous prospect, no matter what way you slice it. Adesanya is going to be facing a lot of physical deficiencies when he faces Chimaev because Chimaev is just so big. There's no getting around that. So that's my first pick. And I told you I had a second up my sleeve, and now I take him out of my sleeve. It's a welterweight, and that welterweight is Colby Covington.
What?
Yep.
What?
Watch where I go with this, and you'll see what I mean. Colby Covington. Yeah, Colby Covington is like the Max Holloway of welterweight and sort of like the Bobby Knuckles of welterweight as well. He is very, very, very clearly, undisputably the second best welterweight fighter on planet Earth. But he's not number one, and he's never going to be as long as Usman's in that division. And Usman's already said he's not going up to middleweight as long as Adesanya is the champion. What do you get when you throw all that in the mix? You get Colby Covington moving up to 185 to challenge for the title. That's what you get. And I think Covington could produce a lot of problems for Adesanya as well. Not in the physical, basically a very different argument to the argument myself and Hunter both made for Khamzat Chimaev. The difficulties would be purely technical and they would be purely fighting skill based. Now, Adesanya is one of the best strikers in the UFC, probably in the top 5 if we were to make one. But as you've both said, Adesanya's glaring deficiency is his ability to be taken down. And who's the best fighter at using pressure to get those takedowns of being unrelenting? Colby Covington, I think you'll find that answer is. And I think Colby Covington could do that very, very effectively. I really do. Adesanya can't go out and try and just maul Colby Covington because you don't do that to Colby Covington. You just can't. Colby Covington will go out, he'll throw those strikes. If he doesn't get the first takedown, he'll go for the second. If he doesn't get the second, he'll go for the third, and it will go on and on and on and on and on in a vicious cycle for 25 full minutes. And eventually he will start getting into land. If Robert Whittaker could take Adesanya down 4 times, I am more than confident that Colby Covington could get at least 2 or 3 takedowns in Adesanya in that division. Not only that, but Covington's a very quick fighter too. Adesanya has speed, but so does Colby. If he can cut that octagon off, he could make life very tough for Adesanya at 185 too. But I've spoken for long enough. Those are my 2 picks. Jack, what do you think?
I don't know the Colby. So Hosma, I agree with you guys. I have 2 as well, by the way. And Keelan, one I'm very interested you didn't choose because you've been hyping him up so much, but we'll save that one for a second. My first one, yes, Khamzat Chimaev, Colby, and you guys talked about it, so I'm going to talk about Colby Covington a little bit. Khamzat Chimaev, the obvious choice, and it's actually terrifying because I think the best hope for 170 and 185 for a new champion is Khamzat Chimaev. Like, he is that good.
205, maybe 205 as well.
We're not even going.
Honestly, he could. I think he could.
We're not even going there. But if there was ever to be a triple champ, it might be Khamzat Chimaev. The guy is ridiculous.
Or Henry Cejudo.
Oh, don't go there. Do not go there. Yeah, he already is triple C. Yeah,
triple C.
But you guys already mentioned it, so I'm gonna stop talking about Khamzat Chimaev for all the reasons you guys talked about. Colby Covington, I don't think he's big enough for 185. Yeah. He's 5'11". Adesanya is 6'4", plus would have a massive reach over him. I think, if anything, Colby Covington would consider going down to 155. Now, that would be a massive cut. I think if there was a division for Colby Covington, it'd be 165. I think if that division existed, he would totally make that extra 5-pound cut. I just don't think, whenever you look at their frame, compare Khamzat Chimaev to Colby Covington, even though they're in the same weight class, they don't look like it. Khamzat Chimaev is a massive human being, as opposed to Colby Covington, who is, I think, a pretty natural 170. Obviously, he's cutting weight, but he's a pretty natural 170 pounder, as opposed to 185. So I like the argument on the basis of the wrestling and everything, and I agree with you. I just don't think he's tall enough, and I don't think his frame is big enough. So Khamzat Chimaev, number 1 for me. Number 2, Alex Pereira.
Whoa!
And Keelan, that's why I'm shocked you didn't pick it. And finally, someone that's actually in that weight class. Whoa! Not a 170 pounder. It's crazy. What's happening? You might have hope. The problem with this one is it's going to take some time. Now, I know, Keelan, one of your bold predictions is that he would be fighting Adesanya by the end of the year. I don't think that's going to happen. But maybe next year, maybe the year after, Pereira needs to get some fights going. But if there's anyone, I mean, who else than the guy that's the only one who has ever knocked Israel Adesanya out in kickboxing, granted, but ever. He's really, really big. Adesanya is big. Look, so like the height and reach advantage, Adesanya won't have that. It would probably be like, and the wrestling would be mixed in. Obviously, Adesanya is not an offensive wrestler in any right, so you probably wouldn't get that out of him. It might be just an old school kickboxing fight between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya, and Pereira has beat Israel Adesanya 2 times in kickboxing. So if I was going to make a pick for who I think would be the most realistic one in that division to beat Israel Adesanya, I'd probably go Alex Pereira. And that's crazy to think, right? Because he's only had 1 fight in the UFC, and I know we're all kind of like saying whatever, but I don't want to discredit Jared Cannonier, but I just think Israel Adesanya is a whole nother level. I would have preferred Derek Brunson to be fighting Israel Adesanya than Jared Cannonier because of the wrestling, of course. But look, Khamzat Chimaev, I think, is a great choice. Maybe if Khamzat Chimaev, he's got to fight for the title first. And it's so fascinating, right? We're going to see just how good he is whenever he fights Gilbert Burns. That fight is going to be massive for his career. But if he beats Gilbert Burns and he beats him in dominant fashion like he's done before, we might be looking at a double champion. I'm being dead serious. If he just walks through Gilbert Burns like he's walked through everyone else before, that would obviously the fight to make is Usman after that. And then after Usman, I mean, knowing Khamzat Chimaev, he'd probably go to Adesanya next. So You have honestly, I think it's a crash course for either two of these guys. Alex Pereira, eventually, I think he will get to a title, and then or will it be Hassan Jamayev after he conquers welterweight and then moves over? Who will reach Adesanya first? Who knows? In the meantime, Adesanya might break some records for title defenses because he's in a great spot. Any closing thought, guys, before we end the podcast?
Yeah. You win. I like that, Alex Pereira.
Thank you. Thank you.
You totally got that from me.
Thank you.
I like that. I like Cosma, but Pereira is definitely the guy to go with. Very smart, Jack.
Thank you.
To mention that.
Yep, credit to you, Jack. That's a very, very good pick, and it's on me for not thinking of it. I have no excuse. I apologize. I should have thought of that.
Step it up, Kimo. Come on.
Hey, I'm not apologizing though. Just know that.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize.
Yeah, to absolutely everybody because I'm the one that's been hyping them up. It's late over here. My brain is not where it should be.
We got you. It's okay.
No, it is what it is. Great pick. I think you actually make a really good point with the 165 division though as well, because as a college wrestler, Colby Covington wrestled at 165. Yeah. So if he goes back to arguably his natural weight, you could definitely be looking at a champion there. No question whatsoever. It sort of depends just on how things fold out or unfold, I should say. But I actually agree with that. I would swap in my Colby Covington pick for Alex Pereira.
Yeah. Well, guys, great podcast. Awesome stuff. I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to go to UFC 271. What an amazing card. Obviously, we took for a long time. I'm probably over an hour talking about this podcast. So good, guys. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening. As always, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. Listen to us everywhere, literally everywhere, including iTunes and Spotify. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at MMA.island and check out our website, MMAisland.net. Phenomenal podcast, guys. Thank you, everyone, so much for listening.
Thank you, guys.